Most of you knew Arlene. Cards you wrote to us described her well. Quoting from those cards, she had a gusto for life, energy, and laughter. A real live wire. She was a spark that lit the hell of his battery. Her zest for life was contagious. She had a wonderful smile, cheerful laugh, and overwhelming kindness. Her bright smile and contagious laugh were noteworthy. So much fun to be around. She had enjoyed everything she did. A palpable zest for life, and even during these recent times, kept her with an indomitable spirit. Such an inspiration. That bright light who touched so many lives. Kindness, that was Arlene to a T. Happy, that smile was infectious. And you described how Arlene helped people. Quoting again, selling our brown Vega. She was amazing. She could work magic on the sickest of plants. So helpful to me in laying the ropes for shaky heights from PTO to Lululemon voters. She helped me through some really difficult times. I don't know what I would have done without her. I do not think I would be where I am today without her encouragement. She always believed in me, and it is such a gift. Jill Weatherhead wrote, she was incredibly busy, an incredibly busy and productive woman who somehow always had time for a chat over the hedge, impromptu backyard picnic or tea party for Amanda and Emily, or even an excursion to Amish country for lunch. I will always cherish Arlene's kindness and thoughtfulness to Emily when Amanda was enduring chemo. During those 2.5 years, Arlene always knew when Emily needed an escape and would invite her over for cucumber sandwiches, lemonade, and conversation. Emily always returned home happy and refreshed. Those tea parties were balm for Emily's 4 and 5-year-old soul, and she treasures those memories to this day. I would like to share a few things with you about Arlene that you may not already know. Arlene Rainey met me at a party thrown by the Sinners, just north of Hanover, New Hampshire, in spring of 1966. That's a true thing, Sinners. She was playing guitar and singing folk songs. Her voice was extraordinary, and she was beautiful. She turned out to be extraordinary in many other ways, and was still singing with that beautiful voice these past months and laughing too almost as often. You would have loved Arlene and her sister Chris's dual ambition. She's a man-eater. About 6 weeks ago, she hobbled from one spot to another in the condo. She liked to refer to the two of us, she and I, as Limpy and Gimpy in the book. Arlene was always solution-oriented and very hard-working. When we met, she had just returned from 2 years as a volunteer in the Peace Corps in Brazil. Later, I learned she had grown up in a small town in Maine, trained and worked as a med-tech in Boston. Then, seeking more challenge, she applied to the Peace Corps, which brought her to 3 months of training in Milwaukee at age 19, including instruction in Portuguese and additional work in parasitology at Marquette University. Periodically, participants were selected out of the program and discharged when she went to Brazil. She was to teach others how to do her job at a new hospital for indigent patients in the northeast of Brazil. The goal was to have all of them examined for parasites. Indigent patients usually have worms and other bugs. Schistosomiasis was common in the area. She was determined that every patient would have the exam, the precursor to treatment. She had found an adequate challenge, but not a solution. For the first year, there were no trainees, even though she worked hard to muscle some up. Her solution was to run the lab single-handedly with her own microscope and no first-stage electric lamp. She used a focusing mirror to illuminate the samples. She made over 3,000 exams that year for each of blood, urine, and feces. 9,000 exams in a year. That's amazing. This has been the pattern throughout her life. Seek or see a challenge, find a solution, and get to work at it. But all I knew at the time when we met was that falling in love is complicated. I stayed in graduate school rather than exiting with a master's and a job offer at IBM to see how love would turn out. I was thrilled when she chose me over others, and it was clear we were going to be married despite no formal proposal. We were engaged on 15 February 1968 in a local bar. Using the low-cost Brazilian tradition, we placed our wedding bands on our right hands for the engagement and shifted to the left hand when we were married on 15th that year. Arlene has always been extraordinarily frugal, practical, and liked to negotiate. We all saw this from local garage sales and rug purchases in Morocco and elsewhere. Years after we were married, I offered to supply the missing engagement diamond. She found that interesting and said she'd rather have a new garage. Remarkably, during a reunion trip that we made with some of her Peace Corps buddies to Brazil, she recounted the story, and each one was asked what they would do. Everyone said, a garage, of course. She's been extraordinarily hardworking and competitive for all the time I've known her. Join her in a task like loading boxes with fruit, and rest assured she will be counting to see who gets the most done. Singing, laughing, frugal, hardworking, competitive, and solution-oriented. There are other examples. She became an expert potter, a lot of you know that, but she really did it twice. She took some classes before we moved to Ohio, and then once here she joined the ceramic guild, which provided people for her to learn from and interact with. The challenge she addressed wasn't just making pots, it was rather how to get out of the house. It wasn't enough. She needed that solution. The ceramic guild used a natural gas-based reduction firing system. I knew that because they came home dizzy from the carbon monoxide. Then she brought it all home with new clay bodies and an entirely new set of glazes that she established and tested for an oxidizing firing system. That's a big job. You just don't know what that amounts to. This time the challenge was becoming a business which required an electric kiln, that's an oxidizing system, and she needed to have pottery at home to be both in business and available for the children. A lot of you know that she became widely knowledgeable about antique furniture, excellent at refinishing old pieces, and irregular at the spring and fall bird and flea markets. She furnished her house through the years and collected old furniture and other things. The original challenge had been a nearly empty house with a limited budget. I'm amazed at what she could do and did do, Mary Ellen answered when she wrote. What couldn't she do? She would find a piece of oak furniture that had been forgotten and neglected and bring it back to its former glory. How I remember the child's roll-top desk she found on the tree lawn on Shaker Boulevard. I had an old platform rocker that belonged to my grandparents, and she helped me strip it, and she reupholstered it. We still have it. Did the same thing for an old upright piano. Generally speaking, Arlene was not patient. Solution-oriented and impatient. One summer, Megan and Ryan both played recreational soccer. When fall came, the rec board still offered soccer for Megan, and Ryan was whining that he had nothing to do. She didn't like whining. Arlene picked up the rec board book and began furiously thumbing through the pages until she found a fall offering. And I remember this to this day. Hockey! How about hockey? That was it. That impatient moment and the need for a solution had far-reaching consequences. I could talk all night about hockey. And aside about patience, I'll probably choke up at this one. She could be very patient with tasks, even tedious ones, be it preparing electron microscopy slides for which one of her colleagues I found a careful mention of thanks for her patience in that task. And she could do intricate glazed designs over and over again on little pots late into the night if she had deliveries to make. And if she knew there was no solution, the story was different. She was enormously patient with me that I slowed down with Parkinson's. And she did ask to continue to tell me to sit up straight. That was great. But I'm sure nobody else is going to tell me.
Now that I know.
Yeah. Some time ago, she read that older women have a problem getting credit, particularly when their breadwinner husbands die. She saw that as a problem. Solution, she began getting credit cards with her name as a primary one. She liked to find the best cashback deals. Cashback went into her running away money. I'll have to explain running away money separately. She checks her statement against the receipts and then gives me the okay to pay the account. I sent the payment and had a secondary card in each account. At one point I suggested 5 cards was enough. She didn't really agree and got 2 more, but just didn't send them to me for payment. She developed quite robust credit limits. A couple of weeks ago, I realized I had no credit cards in my name. I found myself applying for my own credit cards, and they gave me much lower limits. She would have loved that. We also learn about people from what they endure and how they go about it. That's true of this last year or so. Sally Messenger wrote correctly on Facebook that Arlene taught us how to live and how to die. But I want to get into it at a time of early endurance. We had just started my first job in industry in Ohio at our shop. She was home 1 toddler and then soon 2. And I worked a lot into the evenings and Saturdays and some Sundays. She told me later, and by then I appreciated how hard it is to raise 2 kids on your own. Thanks to a tip from our neighbor, Byron Webster, I had applied for a job at GE. To my surprise, I got the offer. But I turned them down and told Arlene I was staying with Harshaw and that I would make things be different. She said, it's your career and your decision. I remember that. It was very calm, very collected. Then about 90 minutes later, she came back. She was still calm and collected. She made a short speech, essentially saying, you say things will be different, but they won't. You say you will work less, but you won't. You like it too much. She didn't threaten. She didn't say things were unacceptable, but her tone and her demeanor said they were. And I knew she was right. The truth was I would not make things better. And it was obvious we needed action, not words. Next morning, I made an unusual call to GE. You know the job I turned down yesterday, could I accept it today? And they said yes. The kids can confirm that things change after that. I have to mention personal computers. Windows PCs and Arlene were bitter enemies. And my attempts to teach her about them were enormously frustrating for both of us. She found the solution. The Apple Store and Apple products. She said it changed her life, and it did. Thanks to the products and the classes at the store, she went from feeling inept to widely knowledgeable, converted me to Macs, and brought many of her friends into the field, including even these last few months. She was also the family photographer and used the computers to organize photos, put together books on our trips to Africa and the Galapagos, and created a professional quality video of the Africa thing. They're amazing. Another little travel story. In early 2004, my boss said, you don't have grandchildren. I didn't know what that meant yet. And I needed an American at the plant in France. Would you and your wife be interested in living there for a while? I checked with Arlene, and that night I expected answered yes the next day. A year later, she told me a lot about that year of delay. We were off to be installed in our apartment in Fontainebleau for a year and a half. We both studied French, and I had a job, but Arlene was entirely on her own and initially did not want to drive. She walked every inch of Fontainebleau, planned trips that we took nearly every weekend. And with the train service, extended her reign to Paris an hour to the north. Before long, she was meeting friends who came to visit us and taking them on extended tours, including long walking tours that became known as death marches. Arlene liked to travel, see things, and meet people. She especially liked to get a good deal and put a lot of effort into the arrangements. We traveled well together. Lots of couples travel, but I'd venture to guess it's not like traveling with Arlene. We began reserving window and aisle seats, but with the one between empty. Sometimes it stayed empty. We liked the extra space. Sometimes someone boring sat down and one of us traded seats with him or her so we could be together. Sometimes we captured somebody interesting. I particularly remember a young woman who was returning to Cambodia to pursue her career as a vocalist. She hadn't been as successful in the U.S., but thought in a smaller setting she could be popular. Last trip out of the country, we made another one to Alaska, but the last one out of the country was 3 nights in Dubai and Abu Dhabi a little over a year ago. It was fun. We went to the top of the world's tallest building, had a desert safari with dinner, saw a ski slope with skiers in a shopping mall, watched dancing fountains in the world's best laser light show, which was left over from the New Year's celebration that year. Raced to catch the last bus one evening, and as we were gone, we were winded, but we made it despite our sciatica. But this was the usual stuff. The record this time was camel racing. Arlene had read somewhere that they race camels in Dubai, and she was determined to find it and see it. Her method, the usual one when the tour books and the internet failed her, was to talk to everybody she met about camel racing and see what we could find out. This included a fellow on our inbound plane who was stopping over for a couple of days during his trip home to the Philippines. He entered a pact with us to find and see camel racing, but our hotels were far apart and there was little chance to work together. He found someone who seemed to know what to do to get to these early morning races and let us know that they existed. We made a separate deal for an all-morning ride the next day with what I thought was a pretty shady taxi driver. But Arlene trusted him. She usually trusted people. I can tell you more stories about that. Even though he turned out to know nothing about location or camel racing. Our co-conspirator, Richard, from the plane, had succeeded the day before and gave us enough information that we were able to chase the place down by directing the taxi. They do race camels in Dubai. These days, a camel is usually ridden and controlled by a small robot instead of a child rider. Remote controllers are present in cars and trucks running alongside the track. We saw and took pictures and videos. But the best video of an organized camel race came from our desert tour guide, who also told us it's a national sport. We sent a copy on to Richard. That's traveling with Arlene. I have a short video of that, but I'm going to do it just before the slideshow. It won't project right now. And you'll believe camel racing when we get to it. So those are some of the things you may not have known about Arlene. She liked to meet people, hear her stories, and make friends. She put time and effort into friendships. Over this last year and again tonight, I've been amazed at how many deep, supportive friendships she has. She had a remarkable life evidenced by her upbeat way of living, her friendships, and her children. She was tremendous fun to be with. Thank you.
I come a little more sparkly. So I'm Mayhugh, and I am incredibly grateful that I had 46 years with my amazing mom. And she is the single most, as I've reflected in the last couple of weeks, months, and years, by far the single most important contributor to who I am today. She, as many of you may know, gave me lots of advice in the last 46 years. And in part, in the last, at least the last few months, we were really counting on that advice and me being able to channel my inner Arlene to find all sorts of things that she had hidden in random places. She had more advice than that. And she was always one to share her advice, her opinions, and I'm sure she'd like me to share it with you. So I'm going to share some of my inner Arlene so that you can all be appreciative of what it means to have your inner Arlene. One, so there's first some advice that I would tell you candidly I did not take. One, be unbelievably organized. Today, literally today, I go to their house on Ronsdale Road and I go to open up the back door, it doesn't open, figure out how to get in the front door, like there's got to be another key. Sure enough, in a crock is a pile of keys that says side door on it, garage, like it's all labeled. So some of you old neighbors, I still have your keys. I now know where they are. She was so organized, every picture was dated, it had every person on the back. It was unbelievable. I have not, if you've seen any part of my office, my house, I have not taken that advice. The other advice she used to give, which those hockey players out here will appreciate, was very good advice for a period of time. The rules changed recently, and she is known, every person that played high school hockey with Ryan would have heard my mom on the sideline yelling, "Ice it, shaker." If they were shorthanded. The rules changed, and I remember my brother and I weren't quite willing to decide who was going to tell her that. It's no longer something she could yell, but that's one I have not taken. There's some advice that I'm confident was just for me. So she was a wonderful, warm, loving, and wanted me to be well positioned. And any of you guys remember Sims?
Yeah.
Okay. So we'll get to the good deals later, which is what she would all want you to know. But Sims had good deals, and I had just gotten a job at McDonald and Company as a assistant on a trading desk, and so I needed suits. And at Sims, it's like a locker room. Like when you go to change, right? It's a locker. You don't get your own room. So we bring in the suits, and she was with me, and I put the suits on, and she decided that the location of my breasts was not adequate, and she stood behind me and put the bra straps and was like, "Can't you get them up there?" She was willing to focus on whatever required I remember that pretty vividly. I'm very happy now that we no longer shop in the locker rooms. She, when I was in high school, also wanted me to be really happy, right? That's always been her goal, is for her kids to be happy. And I remember coming back from diving practice. She was wonderful. She always took us to every activity we ever had. I was coming back from diving practice at a stoplight, and I had been complaining, and not necessarily about anything good. I was a teenager, you can just imagine that. And she looked at me deadpan and said, "You know what will make you happy? You need to flirt more and wear shorter skirts." So I cried. I'm not sure I'm meeting her expectations. And then the other thing I would also share that I agree with her on, and I've absolutely taken on, is when we were unpacking and going through some of her stuff, she had at least 9 pairs of black flip-flops. And so I believe also in the advice of one can never have enough flip-flops. So that's it. The advice I think she would give to everybody, and some she gave regularly, one is raisins only belong in coleslaw. Don't know if you do that, but that's the only place they ever belong is in coleslaw. 2, you must maximize everything. Now, there are 3 things you should maximize. Time. A idle second is a wasted one. If you're at a stoplight, there should be a crossword puzzle, because you might get the actual word in, and she would actually pull it out and work on her crossword puzzle until the lights are green. Space. She was a master packer. Like, she could pack her she only had Volvos, and you know why she had Volvos? Because she measured exactly how long they were, and she knew she could fit the most amount in the back of the Volvo. Like, she packed that thing. There was stuff underneath. She packed a case of bourbon for me on the way back from the New Hampshire liquor store, which we'll get to later. And when my aunt and I were going through her stuff, we found there was a card catalog in her closet. That sounded odd. Like, why would there be a card catalog? There was like 30 drawers in it, packed with shoes. Who knew? But you can pack multiple shoes in a card catalog. Good deals was the other thing to maximize, right? So every year we'd go to Maine, and every year we'd stop at the New Hampshire liquor store, because there's no tax on alcohol in New Hampshire. And you would cart it back, because that was a good deal. We found as we were going through things, we're pretty sure this is the case. Is there a Ronald anywhere? So there's a bracelet that we found. It's a beautiful gold bracelet that says, "To kitten, love Ronald." We're pretty sure, because nobody's heard of Ronald in 1954, that might have been, I believe she shared, that was a garage sale purchase. It's quite lovely. Love to find kitten. But you can always find something. 3, her next piece of advice was, you always are inclusive, and you are always an amazing neighbor. On Christmas Eve every year, she would always ask if there was somebody that didn't have a place to go, they were always invited at her house. And she would invite anybody in the neighborhood. She had people that were from out of town, out of country. Everyone was always welcome to this day, so that they were always allowed to come. And it was a big part of who she was, so you learn that very well. She also took care of people down the street, right? Ginny Baisley, who was on Round Sale with us, had ALS, and I remember every night she would go and she would help her. Not because she needed to, but because she wanted to learn from her. She believed all people were giving a value and had something to say. And so you were always told to be inclusive, and you started with trust first, and that's what mattered. And I would share at this point, there are a few people in the last few months that were unbelievable for her, and I just want to take a second to thank them. There's so many people that I can't possibly thank them here because I know you would like the beverages. But she had in her house, in a condo they lived in on Larchmere, Fran Califatis, who lived 2 floors up. Fran took it on herself to feed the family and mine, so I appreciate that because there was always leftover food. Was always there for her, and just an amazing friend. Laura Sulkin was a friend that just could keep her happy and connected, and introduced her to the world of pickleball and Mayhugh and all sorts of stuff. Her Meshuggah's leader. I think I got that right. Pat, and Jeff, who were the next door neighbors that now have an official pathway to their backyard, but have done everything from mowing the lawn to transporting my daughter to the hospital to anything that was needed. Would have been unbelievably helpful. And of course, her sister, my Aunt Chris, who has channeled a lot of her own inner Arlene. That way. The thing I would say, though, that I am the most grateful and appreciative of from my mom is that she taught me how to be a mom. She said a few things like, you know, you love your kids unconditionally, you always have their back, and you always want to make sure that you raise them to be an independent, resilient person. I have a couple stories I'll share, but that's the thing that has been the best advice she ever gave me. And it's more by example. So, well, you'll get another piece of who she is, but when I was at McDonald Company, actually, so I was in my 20s, and living at home. I had the lovely pleasure of having my mother come and tell me that in her bathrobe, there's something that came out of the air conditioner on the 3rd floor. I think it's a bat. But I'm not going up there. Okay, so it's just me and her. I go up there. Sure enough, there's a bat. It starts flying around, and I run back down. I'm like, it's a bat. She's like, well, I'm not going up there. Okay. So she decides that I need to take care of the bat. Okay, this is resilience. I'm going to learn independence. I'm going to take care of the bat. So I try and figure out how to take it. I fail miserably. She calls my friend Matt Legal, and Matt picks up the phone and is confused why there's a problem, but shows up, which is lovely, with accoutrements. I can't even imagine. We go up, we try and take care of the bat. She throws the cat, HP, Hockey Puck, up the stairs, because HP, who's about 20 pounds and can't move, is going to take care of the bat. I appreciate the solution. She then sends us the vacuum cleaner. Neither of which was going to work. We eventually get the bat downstairs, and we end up pushing it into a box next to my bedroom door. And we go outside, we have the bat, we go open everything up, we expect the bat to fly out. There's no bat. Where'd the bat go? Don't know where the bat went. So she then goes, because she's solution-oriented, which I agree, she goes and talks to her friends, and they say, you know what you need to do? You need to close all the windows. And because you don't want the bat, whatever the case. You open up all the windows, turn the light on, the bat will fly out. Fine, great. So we do that. I am downstairs talking with her, and I'm getting ready to go to bed, and I said, I don't really want to go to bed in my room. She's like, no, there's no bat. Oh, so I go to bed. Sure enough, I shut all the windows because I don't want the bat flying back in. I am underneath 3 layers of covers when a bat starts flying around my room, the windows are shut, and I am screaming, Mom! And I can't, I am on the second floor. She's in the basement, ironically enough, decorating her pottery. And I'm screaming so loud. Eventually she comes up. It's a good 5 minutes. She walks in the door. She says, "Shh, yo," and shuts it. Leaves. And I'm still stuck under my covers with that flying around my house. She comes back in 2 minutes later. She's got a cookie sheet. She's got a tennis racket. And she's got like something over her head. She had heard bats fly into your hair. She has now, by the way, named the bat. The bat is named Barry. So she's now calling the bat, "Barry, get down," right? She's telling the bat to get down. So she is trying to get the bat down with the racket. Eventually gets it on the ground, little fur, and we have to stick. The cookie she brought didn't work, so I had to go get a different one. We had to go make a berry sandwich, take it downstairs, and let the bat go. Now, it was very important to let the bat go. But the moral of the story is she did eventually show up, and she did take care of Barry. The second story that I think will tell you about what she was like as a mom would be, I played despite her. I somehow, and this is all going to come back to bite me, I know, given my daughter's desire for all adventure, I decided that rugby was a great sport. And played for many years, and I managed to hurt myself pretty significantly. I hurt my neck, and I decided, well, I can play a different position, it'll be fine. I did play on a men's team, that wasn't so smart. Hooker on a men's team, never go. So I played again when I moved back to Cleveland, and my good friend Tina invited me to go play rugby in Detroit because the team was short. And well, you know what? You gotta support your team. So I go up to Detroit, I go play rugby, I quote unquote retired. I decided that despite the fact we were losing by like 24-0, that it was a good idea to tackle somebody twice my size, and they landed on my head and cracked my neck, not so good. And so I get put on a backboard and sent to the hospital. And so I'm going to the hospital, it is what it is, and they wheel me in, they're checking me out, they kind of tell me what's going on, and I was supposed to have a party that night at my house. So Tina now has my cell phone and is calling everybody I know, and I was like, you can call everyone but my mother. You can not call my mother, because they didn't know I was going. And so eventually I was like, look, I gotta tell my parents. I'm in a hospital in Detroit, like they kind of need to know.
The gunshot hospital.
It was the gunshot hospital. You can see the gunshot hospital. So it was on 8 Mile, if you know Detroit at all. They wheel me to the phone. I'm in a backboard, so I can't move. So I have to put the phone to my head. And they ask for the number. I saw the number. They call. And I am laying there and saying, please let Dad pick up. Please let Dad pick up. Nope, not so lucky. The phone comes. What did you do? That's it. Like, well, there was a rugby, and she lost it. She is like, what were you thinking? Like, she knew, like, this is what was great about it. She held me accountable. What did you do? Went off on all, you are the smartest person I know. How could you be so stupid? Meanwhile, everybody in the hospital is like expecting this very concerned mother to show up on the phone. She's yelling, I'm holding, like, they're having to hold the phone. Eventually we get to the point where I'm going to get more information after the next MRI, and we're going to find out for the morning. 2 things happened. One, she said, I need to hang up the phone now and go drink wine. Thank you, Pat. She went next door. And 2, Tina has now forever been referred to as Bad Tina. And still comes to Christmas Eve. Look, at the end of the day, my mom lives, I know, she's not here physically, but I know she lives through me, and she lives through my memories and the way I think and the way I go find things in her mind, and I hope that I can teach you guys a way for her to all live through you too, because that's the way we're going to cherish her and cherish her memory. We have a lot of stories to tell, and I am so thankful so many people came. I would love, we are trying to create a scrapbook. One of her biggest worries in the last couple of months is ensuring that her grandkids really got to know her. So there are so many stories, and I would so appreciate if you could send me the stories or tell me the stories or whatever the case is so that we can save them for our grandkids. But we also care that one of the things she really wanted was everyone to connect. So we are so grateful that you're all here, and we are going to try and be brief in remarks so that we can ensure that we all get to interact with one another, because that's what she would have really wanted. So thank you.
Okay. Hi. Wow. Didn't get to see back over there. Hi, everybody over by the bar. You're the smart people. Please feel free. So I have some remarks. We have a slideshow that we'll wrap up with, and then the doors to this room are going to magically open. We can thank my mother for the beautiful weather that we have here tonight. I'm pretty sure she put a favor in. And she would want nothing more than for all of you to be able to go outside and enjoy the beautiful gardens. There's a bar and food out there. So again, I'll remind you at the end here. But I have a few remarks. I'm Ryan, by the way. I'm Arlene's son, if there are folks that I don't know. I'm going to start with a story that my Aunt Chris, my dad and my sister have done a very good job capturing the spirit of my mother. The patience thing seems to be a common theme, and Aunt Chris just reminded me of a story when I was kind of a smart, I was not smart. Megan was very smart. I'm still not smart, but I was driving up to Maine after many, many years of going up to Maine with my mom, where she obviously drove. We were going up to college, and I was driving. And one of the things, this is before Easy Pass, one of the things that she was notorious for is if I was driving, she would direct, as you approach a toll booth, which line is the most optimal line to get in. And she was very, very certain which lines you would get in. So I'm kind of, I'm punchy, it's been a long day, and I'm like, I'm just going to see how I can get a reaction out of her. So there was one very obviously long line, like the longest line. And so I sidled into the long line. And she says, no, that one over there. And then that one, this is the look. And she's looking at me, and I've got a little smirk on my face. And I didn't say anything. And she lost it. And I mean, now I'm like boxed in. And I thought it would be kind of a funny thing. And she's like, what are you doing? All those cars back there that we passed are now ahead of us? And it was clearly a competition, and I was kind of scared. I actually was like, we're going to stay in the hotel and then have to go sleep in the car. That, in addition to the example of one other one, she actually weeded plants outside of LAX, and she had a long way home. So, talk about, like, not an idle second. And in my opinion, like, the crossword puzzle at stoplights is really what I would call, who's driven in a car with her? First off, congratulations on your survival. We know that my son referred to her as the speed demon one time. She made her accelerator and brake pedals work pretty hard. I think all of this, the impatience, was a great example of her zest for life. She was just not willing to let a day, an hour, a minute, a second go by without getting full utilization out of it. And so when I think about my mother, she lived. Like, there are some people, if you look at the spectrum, there are the people that are letting life come to them and just letting things happen. There are the people that are in control of their life and kind of making sure that they're getting what they want. My mother was here. She was in full control of everything that she wanted to do. And I think the way that she lived in so many different ways and so many different facets really sums her up as a person. So in my remarks tonight, I'm going to talk about all the different things that she lived for in her life. She lived for her family. She was the sixth of 8 Rainey children. She absolutely adored her parents, Joe and Dot Rainey. She was always incredibly close with her siblings. We're so fortunate to have Aunt Chris here, especially her sisters. Stories from her childhood were always accompanied with a laugh, and her family absolutely shaped who she became later in life. She lived for Maine. Many of you know she was from Maine. She lived in Shaker for 44 years. You could not find someone more passionate and loyal to our community and Cleveland in general. A close friend actually called her the heart and soul of Shaker Heights. But Maine was always home. She cherished her summer trips to Maine and many others that she could squeeze in. when crossing the main state line, as many of you know, and she was probably going a little bit above the speed limit when she crossed that line, she would always sing Old Pine Tree State, the main state song, at the top of her voice. She lived for her husband. They were an amazing couple, and Megan actually found out a few weeks ago, she asked my mom, why did you choose Dad? Because, as he may have referenced, there were multiple suitors. We didn't know about Ronald at this point, but there were multiple people in the mix. And she didn't skip a beat. She said, oh, you know, John was this other guy. She knitted a sweater for him, which we recently found, which was kind of shady, but he was the nice guy that everybody thought was a safe bet. And she said, no, I chose your dad because he was a challenge. Well, challenge accepted, because she outright dominated him for 50 years. But they had a great relationship, and two stories. So one, they were newly married in Brazil, and I think this is such a great example of their collective spirit. So they're in I think it's a parking garage, and they're waiting for the elevator, and she says, I'm going to race you, and I'm taking the stairs, and I'm going to win. And he's like, okay, game on. So he gets on the elevator, goes up to the second floor, doors open, nobody there. Doors close. Gets up to the third floor, doors open, nobody. So she had taken the stairs and was hitting the up button. And he's sitting there thinking, I'm screwed, she's going to win. Gets to the 8th or 9th floor, wherever they were going, she's not there. And so he comes out of the elevator, she comes down. She had gotten so into it, she forgot which floor they were going to. She overgone it by 2 or 3 floors. Another story, when my dad was, he referenced moving to GE. He actually left GE. He had another offer with another company, and GE was going through some downsizing. So he volunteered to have his position eliminated because he already had another opportunity. A good example of how selfless he is. And there were some career counseling options available. So they both got this personality test administered. And the guy that administered the personality test called them and said, I need to meet you. And he said, I'm in Pittsburgh, but if I drive from Pittsburgh to Cleveland on my own dime, will you spend some time with me? And they're like, sure. They both scored uber high on independence. She was 10 out of 10, he was 8 out of 10. And he said, I cannot imagine two people having a successful marriage that scored that high collectively on independence. And as it turns out, they both scored extremely high in cooperation. It was a pleasure to be able to watch their relationship up close for so many years. It was a great example for how you're supposed to have a marriage. She lived to be a mom. She was incredibly loving, supportive, opinionated, fun, caring, opinionated. Her opinions always came from the heart, sometimes explicit, sometimes not. Megan used to call these the leaks, where she was telling you her opinion without explicitly telling you her opinion. The area where she had the most passionate and entertaining opinions was in regards to our collective boyfriends and girlfriends as we were growing up. She was very protective of us, and that was first and foremost. So I dated somebody after college who broke up with me. And from that day forward, this person was never referred to by name in our house. She was referred to as the girl who broke my heart. For 25 years, never referred to by her name. My sister had a similar situation with a gentleman in business school who also broke up with her. And he also was never referred to by name. His name, Dickhead. So one night in our 20s, my mom and I are sitting there, and I'm poking the bear a little bit. I'm like, oh, what do you think of this guy that Megan dated, or what do you think about this girl that I may have dated, and whatever. And we're drinking, so this was even better, right? So I'm getting her all lathered up. She's all animated, and the conversation kind of wound down, and she paused. This is where it totally backfired on me. She said, you know what? I think the summary is, all the people that Megan dated aren't good enough for her, and all the people that you've dated are way too good for you. But ultimately, she wanted what was best for us, and she wanted us to be happy, as Megan had mentioned. She lived to be a friend. She had an amazing gift to relate to anybody. She made a lasting, memorable impact on people that she only knew briefly, and it is so amazing to see so many of you here that knew her for a long time, a short time, and in between. She was so great at just being genuine, helpful, and fun. And there was no ulterior motive with her. You knew you were getting the best out of her. She lived to talk, and she could talk. She had a lot to share, sometimes multiple times the same story, but she was also a very good listener. For all of college, whenever I wasn't living in Cleveland, I would always call on Sundays to catch up. And it was interesting, it almost felt like I hadn't fully experienced something until I was able to tell my mom about it. She lived to laugh. She had an awesome laugh, and she practiced it often. And some of you are fortunate enough to know her normal laugh. Obviously, everybody's heard that. There was a laugh that she had where she just could not catch her breath. And so it was nice to hear. There was one time she picks me up to take me to hockey practice, which she did hundreds, thousands of times. And we're in the car on our way to hockey practice. She says, "How was your day?" I said, "It was not good." "What's wrong?" I said, "I hate Dad." She's surprised. You know, my father is the nicest person in the world, and nobody could ever hate him. "Why do you hate Dad?" "Well, I got his genes, and I'm a tiny little rodent, and so I wish I was bigger." She said, "Well, what happened?" "I got some really bad titty twisters at school today." And they were very, I don't know if you guys know what titty twisters, you can imagine. And it was extremely painful at this time in my life, and so I was traumatized. Apparently the term titty twister was quite entertaining to her. So we're driving along to hockey practice, and she had to pull over the car. Couldn't catch her breath. And as disappointed as I was, it was a sweet, sweet sound. That laugh is something I will remember forever. She lived for sports. She was the biggest fan for horseback riding, hockey, diving, baseball, any of the grandkids' sporting events that she got to watch. She may have been slightly too intense. Famously, she was not able to watch any of the Indians World Series, or sometimes she'd be able to watch the Indians at bat, but then would have to go somewhere else if the other team was at bat. She did not watch Game 7 of the NBA Finals. My dad had to text her after the game was over. She showed up like instantly as an apparition with a bottle of champagne. But even like a nothing sporting event, we watched the Lake Erie Monsters, or now Cleveland Monsters, a minor league hockey team, in a meaningless regular season game. And we'd be there, we'd chat, she'd be watching the game, but we're kind of chatting, and it's minor league hockey, it's not the biggest deal. And the puck would squirt out in front of our own net, and the other team would have a good scoring opportunity. She'd be in mid-conversation, she'd go, "Ah!" And this happened so many times, and she would always laugh. Like, I'd just look at her, I'm like, "Mom, this is, it's okay." And they didn't score, by the way. And she would always laugh at herself. She loved to laugh at herself. She lived for her 6 grandkids. They were, without question, her greatest source of pride and joy. If you add up all the ages of the 6 kids, you get 54 years. So if you take all of them for 6 times, well, it's not times, it's an arithmetic exercise. And for a vast majority of those years, they lived within 2 miles of her. She fully recognized her good fortune with all of that. As I mentioned earlier, she was an incredible mother. Megan and I have also said many times that her true calling in life was being mémé, which is the French-Canadian term for grandmother that she was known by. We were merely a bridge. And the best indicator of that, the kids, Connor and Cam were like 2 and 3. Sepoli wasn't even born yet. I dropped the kids off at my parents' house. She's got them. And I went to go pick them up. And she's all agitated. I show up. I'm not early. I'm not late. I'm on time. And she's like, "You can't take them yet." I said, "Okay, well, what's going on?" "Well, I'm doing something." I said, "Well, what are you doing?" "They haven't had their spider ice cream yet." I said, What is spider ice cream?" "Oh!" And she gets all happy. She's got the ice cream out. So you take 3 scoops and you put them right in a row, kind of like the 3 parts of a spider. You take pretzel sticks and you put them in each side, like the legs, and 2 M&Ms for the eyes. And she's making the spider. I said, "The kids can have their spider ice cream. We don't have anywhere to go. It's fine." And then I thought for a second. I said, "Mom, did you ever make Megan and I spider ice cream?" And she stopped and looked at me incredulously and said, "No, I would have never made you spider ice cream." I get it. I'm like that. This woman was born to be a grandmother. And finally, as both my sister and my dad said eloquently, she lived for challenges. Moving to Boston right out of high school from a rural farm town in Maine, going to the Peace Corps when that wasn't fulfilling enough for her, marrying my father, who was the challenge, learning how to pot and opening her own business, getting the lowest possible gut price for gas, even if that meant driving 45 minutes out of your way to save 50 cents a gallon. Ice cream and diet root beer, always bought on sale. Canasta, paddleball, pickleball, you name it. She was always looking for a challenge. And of course, battling cancer ended up being her last challenge, and the one that she did not choose. But she was prepared. As she had with every other challenge she faced in her life, she met it head on. She battled with positive realism, with humor and grace, with determination and strength. And just to put her own fingerprints on it, with a little bit of piss and vinegar thrown in when needed. She redefined herself. She could no longer be as active as she wanted, but she didn't complain. She found new ways to spend her time. She remained upbeat. She said multiple times with conviction that she was not afraid to die. She knew she had led a great life and was fortunate for so many things. She got every ounce out of life that she could and left without regrets. She did not waste a second. She lived.